Welcome to Engaging Kitsap, a positive local forum where we bring engaging people, ideas, and organizations into our BKAT studio. Today we welcome Bill Mickelson, better known as Bill Man or BAM, editor and writer for Smokestack, the often irreverent, super local, monthly, and free paper available all over Kitsap. Bill, welcome to Engaging Kitsap.
Hello, thanks for having me.
I introduced Smokestack as a print newspaper. However, it could be called a magazine, a zine. The Smokestack Year in Review called it a stuff paper. So for the uninitiated, what is Smokestack?
It's kind of all those things, isn't it? A little bit all wrapped into one. At its heart, it is a collection of stuff that's happening in your town. I don't know about irreverent, though. I don't see it as irreverent, right? We have nothing but respect. The whole thing is born of a love for this town. We kind of give voice to an underrepresented or frankly maybe unrepresented portion of the community that hasn't been spotlighted for many, many, many years. Someone called that underground or alternative or niche, but those words have been thrown around so much. What do they even mean? It's just stuff that's happening in your town and people doing stuff.
Well, one of the reasons why I wanted to focus on Smokestack is because your mission is so similar to BKAT's in that we celebrate and promote what's local and we want to connect people to what's going on. And we think that's really important. Why do you think Smokestack is important to the community?
Yeah, it gives you the tools that you need to go participate in your community. I think that's the huge part, is the participation. It's also up to each person to decide what's important to them and why or why not. It's important to me because it's important to many different sectors of the community, and it gives them information that maybe wasn't available before. But at its heart, we celebrate people in this town, and we celebrate people doing stuff. Glad that you asked. Why is BKAT important?
Well, you're not allowed to flip the flip the spotlight onto BKAT. BKAT is really important because we're hoping that people are civically aware and civically active. We provide a venue for people to express themselves in video and on television, which in a non-commercial manner, and that is a venue that more and more is going away. Yeah. And then we also feature our own really special, hyper-local, positive stories, which we feel often get neglected in the modern press.
So true.
Yeah.
Similar
So,
missions.
to flip the spotlight back on you, you are a recognizable contributor to Smokestack, but you've taken on the role now of being editor. Why, and what do you hope to accomplish?
Yep, I've been with Smokestack from the beginning. Editor's a weird one, as I told you. I think you mentioned maybe kicking and screaming. But I'm still working on being a writer. I got into this whole thing wanting to be a writer. I walked in off the street to a community newspaper. I was looking for a career. Walked in off the street with an application and a writing sample, and they gave me the sports section. Just one of those things that fall in your lap, right? And I always put sports writer in my byline because, I figured if I wanted a career, it would be something I'd love to do, and that's what I wanted to be. And the community features lady, who was kind of the associate editor, always changed it to sports editor. And I always hated that because I didn't want to be an editor, I wanted just working on being a writer here. But all these years later for Smokestack, having been involved since the beginning from 2008-09 era, it finally lined up where I was the one crazy enough to quit my job in pursuit of people doing stuff. And so, I think that's it. I mean, it's not, I don't have health care and paid time off and things like that. It's just it's a passion to build on this beautiful community, I guess. I don't know if that answers the question.
It does. I think you're great in the role.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll see. We've got, 2 so far under that role, and Got a little typewritten content in there, which is cool. Letter from the editor stuff. And yeah, it's about building it. The amount of support that has come up behind this thing has been incredible. Something I never would have guessed. I know I love it, but there's a lot of love coming in this direction. So that's really neat. And I think we need to expand on that.
It's that what comes around goes around concept, I think.
Sure.
Yeah. So for more than a decade, Smokestack has been created by both floating and regular contributors. I really love the comics by Pat Moriarty and Sean McGinty. Those are totally fun. But who's involved? And tell us some of the features that you've had over the years.
Yes. So it's always been a grassroots group of people doing it because we love it. A lot of cool features, I guess, over the years. This one, having Barry the art guy on the front cover of this latest issue was amazing. But going back, you mentioned Pat Moriarty. He had a 4-page comic that was about the climate crisis. And this is, again, going back more than a decade ago. But the climate crisis conversation was taking place in the neighborhood pub. And that was awesome. So yeah, we've had Pat, world-renowned cartoonist. We've had published authors, award-winning journalists. Just a massive group, all the way down to, I love Dina's This Month in History articles in this newest volume. Dina Taylor is she runs a podcast called Bremelor. Call her the Bremelorian here in the Smokestack. So I love those fun things. We have, it's just a wide range of people.
A lot of good photographers.
And great photographers. Yeah. We've got, we had that backwoods nature section. Another feature in the early volumes of Smokestack, we had a 4-page feature of backcountry photos from local nature photographers, which was very neat. So a lot of people involved. I mean, similar to BKAT, you guys have a lot of talented people here too. What are your contributors like?
Yeah. Well, our team is amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a great production administrator, Mike Spencer, who's been here for so long. He's our historian and all things tech, and so on and so on. But I think that'll be saved for the podcast.
Sure, why not? Yeah.
This print magazine looks and feels different this year. What's changed and why?
Well, we change it every year. Maybe a nod to our sordid past of, different types of formats coming out over all the years, but it's more just to keep it fun. We change up the format every year so that we continue to have fun with it and to keep the reader on their toes, and hopefully they have more fun with it too. A lot of good response on the new format. It's a slow grow on purpose. We're not trying to take over the world all at once or get ourselves in over our heads. So just, life's about those little changes that you make, right?
I really like your logo with the typewriter, and the typewriter is an important part of writing the paper. So tell us about that process.
So I write everything. I'm one of those weirdos that writes on a typewriter still. Who knows why? Probably just because it's fun. And Bremerton's interesting in the fact that it's got 2 typewriter shops, right? Not many towns can lay claim to that. So we are very blessed to, just like anybody, I picked up a typewriter. It's $20 at a flea market. Sure, why not? But I was lucky enough to have this place in town, and shout out to Paul down there, that could fix that typewriter up where it could actually write. And then it was just a whole new world of writing after writing on computers and pen and paper for so long. I was born after the time of typewriters, but when I got my hands on that thing, it's a whole different experience. It's a cathartic experience, and it's a pain in the ass, big pain in the ass. But I write the first draft of everything that I'm working on typewriter. And hopefully, eventually, I'd love to do a completely old school issue where there's no computers involved. It's all typewritten copy, letterpress headlines, film photos, physical rubber cement and razor blade layout. That'd be fun and ridiculous.
Right. Labor of love.
Why not? Well, it's fun. If it's not fun, you're doing it wrong, right?
Right. You have told me print stays. So talk about being a print newspaper in an increasingly digital age.
Right. Who starts a newspaper in the 2020s, right? That's what I mean by the response has been so crazy. It's because, that's just a very backwards idea. But the more you think about it, print's important. It dawned on me when we were doing an article on Charleston Music Venue, right? Andy and Angel, you guys had a great feature on them as well.
Thank you.
And that story is such a beautiful story of what they've built,
It is, yeah.
kind of the leading people of that revitalization on Callow that everybody's talking about now. They started that way back in the day. But when we were going to tell that story, it kind of felt like to our audience, that story may be fairly well known. So I kind of flipped it, and instead, why don't we go look at the building itself and trace the history of the building that they are in to celebrate their anniversary for this article. And in doing so, a lot of time in the library, and we found the Polk directories, which led us to a bunch of different things, and those were all on paper. Searching on the internet was very much more difficult. It's so fleeting, and it has the potential to have a very long scope, but so many things disappear, and it's so hard to find certain things as opposed to books on a shelf. So there's that concept, but also it's just more fun, I think, and it's, again, catharsis. It's a completely different experience with the ability to do something constructive in your brain reading something on print as opposed to the mind-numbing effects of the digital world. For all the positives that can be had there is a flip side to that.
Well, I know that for myself, having something print to hold on to, the tactile experience of reading print is compelling.
It is.
I enjoy that.
And it's interesting, the technology cycles, right? Like video killed the radio star, right? Some said that, TV news killed the newspaper. Now there's the internet threatening human connection. There's always a cycle, but I think each is important in its own way. And I think print is very important, on top of, independent media independent local news media is kind of vital at this point, and it's been disappearing across the country at alarming rates. So I think that plays into that thing as well.
Thank you for explaining that. So I was really excited to hear that you are doing a live monthly podcast called Local Legends with Josh Farley. Tell us about that.
Yes, Josh rules, right?
He does.
Josh Farley, a lot of our viewers here probably know Josh. Amazing guy, amazing journalist, amazing human. Left the Sun a while back, and as soon as that happened, I immediately started brainstorming ways of how can we keep him involved in local media, taking the least amount of time as possible because he's a super busy guy. Now he's writing for the Seattle Times. And that idea of a video interview, not dissimilar to this, came up through one of the members of the advisor group. But the guy who had the idea, his caveat was that the first story had to be mine. And I was reluctant.
Fittingly.
As you know, I'm not great on camera. But so then the brainstorm was, well, who's going to ask the questions? And that just kind of clicked. Somehow we talked Josh into it, and we ran it at, a little bit before his local quiz night. It's turned into this new idea of kind of like a podcast, but it's a live conversation. And so there's multiple dimensions to it. Yes, people can go back and you can watch every one we've done so far in the podcast section of our website, but you can also come and be a part of the conversation and working on this idea of a live podcast. Like wait, don't tell me, stuff like that. Right. But not quite there yet.
Yeah. Well, I watched several of them, and your interview was great, by the way.
Oh, geez.
But yeah, you have great people. I mean, Eric Morley, Mike Herrera. You've got some really interesting people. In fact, you invited me to be a guest on the podcast recently, and it was great. Josh did his research as usual and is a fun interviewer too. We talked about how important BKAT is for local connections and showcasing the community. And I had never been in the Minette Saloon, and the vibe was high energy. So why wouldn't I have agreed to do the show?
Crazy not to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where can people find the podcast?
It's on our website, kitsapsmokestack.org. There's a podcast section beneath all of the calendars. We've got all of our calendars online as well as all the stories, collection of them. It only goes back to 2022, though. Our, as you might have read in that year in review, our volunteer digital content department got a little burned out after I killed the website. So we've got all the stories up from, I think it's November 2022 to current, and hopefully at some point we'll, dissect all those old issues. And
Right.
maybe
It'll be a work in progress.
Oh, everything's a work in progress.
Yeah,
isn't it, though?
it's very true.
It's a very grassroots thing. It's building upon itself, and it's run by passion.
Along that vein of conversation about being grassroots and how can people participate in the success? Do you need contributors? Do you need distribution locations? You mentioned volunteers.
We're adding them all the time.
Okay.
That's what's so cool. We're up to more than 100 locations. I think 127 was the last count. We've got contributors writing in all the time, which is great. If anybody wants to contribute, please send an email. But yeah, mostly you just do stuff in your town, right? Go participate in your community. Be your own algorithm. Don't always let stuff be fed to you. Go participate. Go be active. Support your local businesses. All that stuff.
It's a great call to action.
It is what it. Yeah, it's it's good fun if you're doing it right.
Nice. So, Smokestack in print. Where can we find a copy?
Out in your community. Go to your local coffee shop. Go to your brewery. Go to your restaurant. Go to your typewriter shop. Go to your record shop. Go to your bookstore. Go find us there. 120 locations, over 395 square miles, thousands of copies every month. Comes out the first weekend of the month. I've had some folks say that, they missed it and they get to it a week later and they said, I missed all this cool stuff. When do you? First weekend of the month, we have distribution happening throughout the county from Port Gamble to Port Orchard, out to Bainbridge, out to Seabeck.
Who delivers all those?
We have a few people that kind of float in and float out, and I fill in the gaps.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, Bill.
Rad.
It's wonderful to talk about your goal of people doing stuff. Thank you for keeping the free press alive in Kitsap, too.
Yes. Once we save the free press, then we'll work on the attention span issues, right?
You've been watching Engaging Kitsap, a positive local forum where we bring engaging people, ideas, and organizations into the BKAT studio. And we'll see you next time.
Mm-hmm.